Welcome to Alberta Municipal Votes 2025 here on Municipal Affairs. With October 20th fast approaching, the race for a municipal office across Alberta has been heating up. From every corner of the province, candidates for mayor, reeve, and council are stepping forward with ideas for stronger communities, smarter growth, and brighter futures. Today, we are turning our attention to the town of Nanton, Alberta, where we will be sitting down and chatting with, in person, Jennifer Handley, who is running for re-election as Mayor of Nanton, Alberta. Jen, thank you so much for sitting down with me in Nanton to talk about yourself and talk about your re-election bid to become well, I guess not next, but the continuation of the mayor of the town of Nanton. I want to start with a simple question. 12 years on council, You want to go for another 4. What was the decision based on to put your name back on the ballot?
Yeah, I would say anyone close to me knows that it was not a decision made lightly at all. So I've always found that the year before an election, my mind starts spinning as far as, should I continue on or not? And certainly over the last 8 months, it's been back and forth by the hour. No, I can't keep going. Or, yeah, we've got so much on the go. Let's go. The last 4 years haven't been easy. Right out of the gate, we had a member of council who passed away, so we had to go right into a by-election, which always puts a lot of pressure on a new council and on the town. And it's just been a really complicated term. And, we're dealing with changing provincial policies and changing federal policies, lots of inflation. It's just been an intense 4 years, and you feel it in the general public. And so it's a matter of, do I want to put myself through this? Do I want to put my family through this? Do I still have something to give? And ultimately, it was just about 3 weeks ago where it was like a switch went off in my brain that it felt right to continue on for 4 more years. We have some substantial projects that are just kicking off over the next couple of years, and we've been in the forefront of it for some of these projects for 12 years, and we're just breaking ground on the schools, and it felt like a bit of a sense of responsibility to be able to maintain a level of continuity at the council table, as well as continuity for our staff that have been working on these projects for so long. I know we'll probably have at least 3 new members at the council table, and I think there's always a benefit to having those fresh voices as well as those seasoned voices. So for me, it's a clear path forward that I can't walk away from the work that we've been doing.
But the work that you're doing is great and understandable, but an election is always a time about renewal, about what the community can be. You say you have work still left to be done. What does Nanton look like in the next 4 years if the people of Nanton put their trust in you to lead council over the next 4 years?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I think every election you kind of just get fired up, and it's your opportunity to tap in to the conversations with the residents, knocking on doors, going to farmers markets, going to forums, all of that, right? And I think that's what really invigorated me was, we're doing what we can on the day-to-day basis. We think we have the temperature of the community, but this is a check-in with the community to say, are we on the right track? Because we have really 5 monumental projects that are happening, we do need to get that temperature and say, okay, here's why the decision was made. Are we on the right track? And I really do want to hear from the residents and from our business owners to ask the questions that we might not have thought of, right? And so for that reason, I think as far as representing the town of Nanton, I've always looked at it as from a lobbying standing point as well as a relationship building standing. And we have built a lot of relationships both with the provincial government and our surrounding municipalities. And I think because these projects are about to launch, that maintaining those relationships is so vital for the community.
You talk about the relationships that need to be built, and and this is not blowing smoke, and it's just my honest observation of where Nanton is now, but Nanton seems to always hit above its weight. It always seems to be the voice that you don't really think about, but when you hear it, you're like, oh, Nanton's on the radar. Over the last 12 years, you've been on council, you've been that mayor's chair. How have you transformed the advocacy work that Nanton does alongside your administration that you can grow upon in the next 4 years? Because municipalities across this province are in a very hard spot right now. There's a lot of issues that they're dealing with, and we're going to talk about some issues here in a few minutes. But how do you believe your voice in that mayor's chair can help move Nanton forward, not just for the council, but for every single resident?
So I think the biggest thing is to remain politically neutral, and it doesn't matter who's across the table that we need to work with, regardless of which party at the federal or provincial level we need to navigate. We have to put our own personal values aside to move those initiatives forward. And when I was first on council as a councillor, I took a course in Lethbridge called Lobbying 101 for elected officials. And it was probably the most profound courses that I've taken. And I tell everyone on council that you need to take this. And it really, for me, lobbying and building those relationships and knowing that you need to be persistent. They need to know that Nanton will be relentless and we will not just go away. And if we've got a grant application or we've got a specific project that we're trying to achieve, that you're not just going to hear up from us once. We will be relentless. We'll be respectful. We won't be going out to the media blasting, how unfair things are. We need to stay the course and just focus on, you can't forget about us. And if one path that we've taken with a minister and that minister changes and we have to start all over again, we try
Speaking
different
from
approaches.
experience there?
So much experience. and I think that's just it. We're not just building our relationships with those ministers, we're building it with their staff, of course, and always inviting them to tour our facilities to really see the issues. And of course, building that relationship with our MLA to know that she's advocating for us or he's advocating for us in Edmonton as well.
You talk about the advocacy work, but there's also the responsive governance work that you have to do as a mayor as well. Do you believe in the last 4 years you have effectively represented all, I don't know what they're called. Is it Nantonians? Nantonites? Nantonites? Is it Nantonites? Okay. Yeah. Do you feel like all Nantonites have been represented well around this council table with you as their mayor? Because there's always, and I always quote this on the show, so I apologize for anyone who's listening again to this quote, but the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few or the one. It's the Star Trek Wrath of Khan, Spock to James T. Kirk quote. It is basically, how do you represent an entire community without forgetting about the individual? Because you have to think about the entire community, but every individual Nantonite has their own individual issues. Mm-hmm. Do you feel like you've been able to balance the community with the individual?
I think to the best of our ability. I think, certainly when I first joined council, I was a perpetual people pleaser. And you learn very quickly in this role that you will always at any given time have somebody disappointed in you. And
breaking news here, everyone in Nanton.
Exactly. And it's tough, right? Where you just want to find a way to make someone happy. And, maybe one house, their garbage is in the front, the garbage is in the back, just to make everyone happy. It's impossible. And so once you shed that layer of people pleasing and knowing that your decisions are made for the best, in the best interest of Nanton, and not just financially, but socially as well. Because, there's certain projects or initiatives that come forward that I know would completely divide the town. And especially governing through COVID, we saw so much of that division. And my mind is, is it worth bringing forward to council when we know the effects will really be toxic for the town overall. And so weighing, is it a true need, or is it a need that could potentially harm the culture and the fabric of our community? And I would say, for the most part, I think people think that we are approachable, and that if they have a question, they can reach out, and we really try our best to get the public's perspective on everything. And I'll get emails and, respond within 2 days. And there's so many times at this council table where somebody will say, I heard this, or I saw this online. And so we are paying attention, and those voices are considered at our council table, regardless if, we agree with them or not. I think it's important to consider every perspective.
How important is it for yourself to listen to all sides of the equation? Because we often silo ourselves in our societies and in our even social media spheres. We listen to the people who agree with us more often than not. But as mayor, as council members, and as someone who's running for re-election, you have to listen to all sides, even those who say, Jen, you're doing a crappy job, and I'm going to tell you why you're doing a crappy job. How important is it for you to listen to all sides of everything that you are looking at, even if it is someone who just vehemently disagrees with you?
Yeah, I think that's our job. We're not here to
it's your job, but it's a lot
we're not
easier
here to
to
be
say than to
comfortable.
do.
No, and it certainly isn't. We're not here to be comfortable. And I think, understanding and feeling the essence of our community, and not just hearing the words, but understanding where they're coming from. And, where is that pain point? Where is the substance that's bringing in this conversation? And I think it's something that we do pride ourselves in, and try to navigate through. And again, sometimes it might not make sense to move that thought process forward, or sometimes it's like, what, we never looked at that approach, and we need to double check something. And so I do welcome it, for sure. It's not always easy, though, right? You've got to put your ego aside. You've got to just kind of, especially if it's something that you're passionate about and that you do get those blinders on. I like to think that that's the value of having an entire council, that they can, also recognize, wait a minute, we need to push through or look at this a little bit more. And sometimes you just have to put yourself in check.
The best line I ever heard about ego was from Barry Morishita, former president of Alberta Municipalities and Brooks Mayor. He said, of course I have an ego. Every mayor needs to have an ego if you're going to run, because you wouldn't be there without it. And I was like, yep, that's true. I want to turn to the issues now, because that's what most people are probably tuning into and listening and saying, okay, what does Jen think are the issues that are in the community? Mm-hmm. Now, you've relatively launched your re-election bid shortly ago, like a few weeks ago. As you said, 3 weeks ago you announced, and 3 weeks ago it sort of clicked, and on social media you made it social media official, as the kids say it these days, a few days ago. Mm-hmm. What are the issues that you're hearing from residents that they want to see addressed in the next 4 years?
Yeah, so I would say water. I know. It's always top of mind here in Nanton. We've done some incredible things over the last 4 years, especially to improve the quality of our water. But now it's coming down to the quantity of our water. So 90% of our water comes from Mosquito Creek, which is overland, and it runs through the Nanton Golf Course. And that water, especially in the last 5 drought years that we've had, just is not a sustainable source. And so for the last 5 years, we've been looking at other sources of water. We've been approved for a $14 million grant from the province for a treated water line from High River. And right now we're in the design stage, which was also a $1 million grant from the province to design it and look at the sustainability and the viability of the project. So right now we're nearing the end of that design stage. We should be getting the results sometime in October, which again, this is something we've been working on for nearly 4 years. We've been at the table with High River, we've been at the table with engineers. It's difficult to walk away and not piece together those final layers. And also, we need to work very closely with the town of High River to move this project forward, as well as Foothills County and the MD of Willow Creek. So water's always top of mind here in Nanton. Development would be probably the next thing. We are all sold out of residential lots here in town. So we do have land that we need to open up here within the next probably 18 months. And it's a matter of where do we start? And, does the town want to become the developer again? Or can we find a developer to take on even phases of this project?
I'm going to talk about the second dirtiest word in municipal politics, and that is annexation. Mm-hmm. Is there any future plans of annexing the MD of Willow Creek or any areas around? Because if you're at your capacity right now, the last thing, I shouldn't say the last thing, but I've always been told that the worst thing that a municipality can do is stop growing. Mm-hmm. Because the moment you stop growing is the moment you start dying. Yeah. Because growth is what you need for a community. And people may send in emails saying that we don't want to grow, and that's understandable, but then your taxes are going to go up. Yeah. And let's just call a spade there. Where do you grow? Is it up or out?
So it's out still. We do still have land available to us that will probably hold us over for the next 50 years.
Okay.
Residential-wise, I would say...
But
industrial, we're down to about 7 acres. And so I would say the next council, we certainly want to finish up those last 7 acres, but there will need to be conversations about where does the next industrial lands go. And, do we expand east? Do we go south? What are our options? So when it comes to annexation, I would say we would be looking more for industrial annexation, but we're still probably a good 5 to 10 years before that would happen.
How do you make growth a priority when people may not want to see growth? And I say that speaking to the mayor of a community, but also someone who's running for re-election. People move to smaller communities from Calgary, from High River, from Lethbridge to places like Nanton because they want that small town atmosphere. How do you see yourself being able to balance that over the next 4 years of growth with sustainable growth?
Yeah, that's the big question, isn't it?
That's
right?
Why you're running for election. I'm asking it on the political show about politics during the election.
And we hear that a lot, especially when it comes to...
Do you actually hear it a lot?
Well, just when it comes especially to our water capacity.
Yeah.
So people will tie that together to say, well, if we're struggling with water quantity, why would we even be talking about expanding? And really, again, our answer is it's a matter of we do have the infrastructure there, the facilities to process the water. We do have enough water. It's just not an ideal source. So that's why we're working on this Plan B. Yes, you could lose that essence of small town, but I don't know, Nanton. As you said, we're kind of beat to our own drum down here. We're a little island, and we just make things happen. So, knowing it's funny because my real paying job, I'm a real estate agent, so I see the people that are moving into Nanton, and they're coming from communities like Airdrie, Okotoks, Chestermere, because that small town feel has gone. And Nanton is that next community that's still commutable for people, but still has that small town essence. How do we preserve that? I don't know. I really don't know. I would like to think about, the thoughtfulness of our planning documents, having plenty of green spaces, having character on the home, making sure we still have large lots. That's what people value in small towns. They can park their RVs on their lots, and there's a little bit more flexibility in just the day-to-day regulations of land use here in small towns.
So prior to this interview, I did a bit of research. I do a little bit for these type of interviews, and I looked on social media about what the challenges are in the community, what people are saying, because you're probably going to hear these at the doors, and you're probably going to hear it from people who are going to vote for you. One of the big things that I took away, and outside of the water issue, and it's probably something that you hear about all the time in June when you send out those beautiful property taxes, is taxes are too high.
Yeah.
Do you agree with that?
I do. I see it every day again in real estate, selling in multiple municipalities around southern Alberta. I know that Nantons are a little bit higher, but I also recognize that we have less people paying for major infrastructure. So I do know that towns under 5,000, we are paying a premium for our property taxes. At the same time, our houses are $100,000 less to purchase than if you were buying the same house in Calgary, you're probably at $300,000 less. So it's this give and take that do you want up front a lower cost house, but you know you're going to be paying a little bit more in property taxes than you would in the city.
The reason I say that I asked that question is because over the last I would say a month and a half, there's been a lot of chatter about municipalities needing to stay in their lane and only spend on things that are in the municipal jurisdiction. Now, I've not gone through every single budget that you have ever passed, and nor should probably anyone but the people who sit around this table, because that would be a lot of work. But people should understand where they're spending their money. With the money that you have collected in property taxes, do you think you're spending taxpayer dollars wisely?
I do.
On municipal issues?
On municipal
because
issues.
There's a follow-up question, which you know is going to come right after.
On municipal issues, so we really focus on our operating budget to focus on operating expenses. So staffing, insurances, operating of buildings, that kind of thing. And of course, reserve contributions. So we have really been diligent in our reserve contributions and put about 20% into our reserves every year, which has helped enable us do these massive capital projects and meeting the grant needs the way that we have been able to. And so when we have all these projects that are coming to a head, we're ready to jump on them because we have this reserve. However, you have to have the temperature of the community and, the world around you when it comes to inflation, because there's been some tough years where we're like, we see these pressures of inflation on our budget. It's beyond our control, or we see these downloaded costs from the province that are going right to our property taxes. The only room to navigate in our budget is to lower our reserve contributions. So we have, in a couple of years, we've lowered it to 15%, depending on the economy. And, as house values have gone up, it's given us a little bit more flexibility to kind of increase or decrease accordingly.
The reason I asked that question because it brings up the follow-up. Now, one of the two areas that I heard about a little bit on social media, because we should always trust what social media says with like a complete grain of salt. But the one area that I saw a few times was crime and healthcare. Mm-hmm. Now, these are two areas that the municipality does not have a lot of jurisdictional role to play in, but I can imagine over the last 12 years, you have been dealing with it a lot more than you probably have in the past. Mm-hmm. I know last summer there was a big, you posted on social media about someone taking electrical cords at the two grain elevators. Yeah. And I'm not trying to just point that out. It's just that's where we're going with it. Do you feel like Nanton is a safe place to live?
100%.
Would you say that the community members would agree with that statement?
I would say maybe not 100%.
If you can get 100% of people to agree on anything,
Exactly.
Jen, I would love to sell you water.
But, you know, it's funny because last summer I probably wouldn't have been as confident in saying 100%. I wouldn't have said that. I would have said probably 60%. We did have a lot of people that were coming from the larger centers looking for crimes of opportunity. So things that are not locked down, car doors that are not locked at night, house doors that are not garage doors that are left open. They were crimes of opportunity. We also did have some encampments as well. And we worked really closely with our RCMP. They gave us some guidelines as far as which bylaws would help them and give them tools to kind of take care of some of these prolific crimes that were happening. And we just had the sergeant here the other day with the RCMP, and crime has gone down drastically. So now we're like just one or two a quarter. Like, it's very minuscule. I would say the biggest thing that we are constantly dealing with when it comes to infractions would be Highway 2 speeding and traffic infractions. That's the biggest thing we're dealing with now.
And it begs the question, what do you plan to do about it? Because the Highway 2, provincial highway, it's not but your bylaw officers are probably responding to things that are happening on Highway 2. The RCMP are dealing with things that your bylaw officers are doing together, and that means resources from the community are going into provincial jurisdictional lanes. We talked earlier on about standing up and hitting above your weight. How much of your job do you think the next 4 years is going to be advocating for things that are not traditionally in the municipal realm but are in the provincial and federal realm? Because RCMP, bail reform, repeat offenders, healthcare, access to reliable, because I think I read on social media someone had to drive up to Calgary to go to the emergency room because this was closed, Okotoks was closed, so they had to go to Calgary. To me, that's irresponsible for anybody to have to drive an hour to go see a doctor. I went to a doctor and it was a 10-minute drive, and then I was in there for 10 hours. But that's the wait times. Mm-hmm. How much do you want to focus on those provincial issues, or do you want to just stick to the municipal issues in the next 4 years?
I would love to stick to municipal issues. I would love to just focus on water and garbage collection. But the reality is that's not the world we live in, and it hasn't been since COVID times. We've had to make health decisions during COVID. We've had to...
because of the province, I should mention that.
Because of the province. And, you know, I would love to stay in our lane, if you will, but sometimes when you see your community's needs are not being met, we are the voice and we have to be vocal. And we go back to the lobbying discussion I mentioned earlier. We had major staffing shortage with our RCMP 4 years ago. We could not keep our RCMP in town. We were constantly short-staffed. They talked about hubbing us with Clare's Home or High River, and we would have lost our detachment there, which was completely unacceptable to us. We are off on our own. We're 20 minutes away from other municipalities, 3 other municipalities. We need our own RCMP. We were relentless in our advocacy, both with the highest level of the RCMP, but also with the province and our MLA, to say this is a vital service for a highway community to have. We weren't asking for much. We only had 4 officers that were allocated. That's all we need.
Because you don't have to pay the 70%, right?
We don't have to pay the 70%, but we certainly have to pay $400,000 a year for those RCMP services. And we really leverage that to say, listen, our property taxpayers are paying for a service that we are not getting. And ultimately, because we were relentless, they knew anything to come up about RCMP, Nanton was going to be vocal about it. And, you know, maybe I've been a little bit too vocal about the provincial police force. I believe in our RCMP. I believe that is the right service for Alberta. And we have expressed our concerns about a provincial police force, which, you know, you always have to weigh, like, do we want to go in there and have that conversation, be vocal on social media? about these types of things. But I think because of the relationships that we've built with our RCMP detachment, especially in the last 4 years, that's something we've constructed. They're at the council table every quarter. We're building policies together and priorities with our RCMP, and I think every community should have that relationship with our RCMP. And then, when it comes to healthcare, we have been very vocal, especially around ambulance response time. That's a big issue here in town. Again, it's not something that we want to weigh in, but it is a reality. There is a fear that if there's a major emergency in your household or on the highway, that the response time of ambulances is completely unpredictable. And then on top of it, we've got a health center here that's 60 years old nearly, and AHS leases it from the town. And with all of the changes that have happened in the province over the last couple of years, it's paralyzed us from building this new health center. We were ready to break ground, and the province imploded AHS to rebuild it from the ground up, but it left a lot of damage in the background where we're like, wait a minute, we need a commitment for health services here in Nanton. And we've got 2 years of constantly knocking on the minister's door or the parliamentary health secretary's, pardon me.
Now 4 ministers' doors.
And it's exhausting. And to us, it's common sense. And we're partners with the MD of Willow Creek and the MD of Ranchlands in this initiative. And it's always this delicate line of how much do you push? And you don't want to necessarily expose the provincial government or shame the provincial government. We need them. They are our partners, and so we need to really, at any given opportunity, make sure that we're inviting them to this health center so they can see the issues and, try to find a solution together with them. But it's tough and it's exhausting at times. And same with.
And you want to go for another 4 years?
I got this. But even with our schools, when this is quite the example. When I first came on council, my daughter was in grade 1 and my son was in grade 3, and we were talking about a new high school at that time. And I thought, how wonderful, my kids will be in a new high school and they'll be able to graduate from a new high school. Both of my kids are now graduated. My daughter graduated this year, but we have just broken ground on the new schools. But it was persistence. And, this was a little bit, we weighed into the trustees' lane in order to, and I knew they were advocating for these schools, but we really wanted them to have, the province and the Minister of Education to understand the importance of these projects from a municipal standpoint, from an economic development standpoint. We have kids going to Foothills County to school and to other school divisions because our schools were no longer meeting the needs of our students, which will kill our town if it kept going. And we wade into that lane, and here we are. We've just broken ground. So we've got to stay at the table just to see these projects through.
I want to turn to this table in particular. And we're sitting around the council tables right now as we're recording this interview. And the next council, as you said at the beginning, there's potential going to be 3 new voices, guaranteed 3 new voices no matter what at the table. In the next council, that means you will have to gear up and try to get as much done as quickly as possible. You have a budget that you'll have to pass right away, and you have to form relationships right away. Mm-hmm. And in our system, in our Alberta municipal system, the mayor has the exact same amount of power as the councillors that sit around the table.
We don't have veto power? I've heard people telling us we had
You're
veto
not
power.
Ontario yet. And I say yet because you might get strong mayor powers here shortly. How will you be able to forge the relationships with the new councillors who are around the table along with yourself to ensure smooth continuity between this term and the next term? Because you can't start from square one on day 1 on October 21st. You have to continue to move the ball forward. And you, as the head of council, the one who organizes the agenda with the CAO, the one who sits in that chair, who bangs the gavel that was given to you by a fellow councillor. How do you plan to ensure the smooth transition, to ensure that the work doesn't stop and it continues on after October 20th?
Yeah, I love that question. And and it's tough in a small town when so many of us, this is a second job. And, so we're being stretched in a lot of places. And, really, I would say the work doesn't start on October 20th with those new members of council. The work actually started probably in May. And as people started announcing, I started reaching out to them and saying, you need to read this study. You need to pay attention to what's being talked about at council, because this is going to fall on the council table in October. This is something you're going to have to understand. And, and a lot of the candidates have been really open to those conversations and are asking questions. And we had quite a substantial meeting in August where we pretty much talked about everything and anything. Like, all the reports were coming in at the same time. And I reached out to every single candidate that was running, and I said, this would be a very valuable meeting for you to attend, because most of this will roll into November. And every single candidate showed up, which it thrilled me.
Probably the first time in a very long time you've seen this gallery packed.
For sure. Well, we never have anyone, right? So it was great to have that eagerness just to learn. But yeah, from my experience watching other counselors on board, I would say it takes a good 18 months to 2 years to fully understand how all the pieces come together, and then to really be effective in your role. And so you do have to put a little bit of faith in the returning members of council to help you understand how decisions were made. I was the very first council I was on. We had a huge turnover, brand new mayor, 5 new members of council. And, it does paralyze the town when you have too much turnover, because a lot of times we don't want to make those massive decisions because we don't have the full picture. We don't know how much debentures we have, or the impact it could have on property taxes, or, on the reserve contributions. So you kind of, we'll wait until we have better understanding. And this again is a big reason why I'm running again, is because all of these projects are coming to a head in the next 6 months. Big decisions need to be made, and absolutely welcome a new set of eyes on these projects. But it's important to understand where we came from and how we got to this point. Sometimes over the last 6 years, especially when it comes to the clinic, how did we get here? And we can't stop working for the next 2 years till people come up to speed. So it is a lot of work, debriefing with members of council after a council meeting to make sure they understand, to answer any questions they might have, making sure administration's available to them to answer more technical questions. And I would say the most vital thing to try to do is for them to understand their role. And their role is governance and not operations. And, and that can be really tricky for some members of council that think, we can do things more efficiently in roads or whatever. That's not our job. Our job is to establish budget and policy and work with our one employee, the CAO. But when it comes to how many times garbage collected on Main Street, that's not our job.
That's administration. It's not governance.
And it's tough, right? Because a small town especially, people are calling us on a long weekend saying the garbage isn't taken out. So making sure that members of council understand what to do in those scenarios and how to answer those inquiries.
Big final question before I let you go. Actually, second final question before I let you go.
Okay.
What haven't we talked about that you want to make sure the people of Nanton know about why you're running, and or the issues that you want to champion over the next 4 years?
I think one of the big questions I get when people have found out that I'm running again, they're a little bit surprised because they see the divisiveness in politics in general, and why would I be putting myself and my family and my reputation through this again? And I would say my why is I believe in the work. I believe in the people of Nanton, and I know how to be effective in those beliefs. And I still have a little bit more work to do. I don't have closure just yet. And I feel that sense of responsibility to continue on.
Okay, you mentioned them, so I'm going to just ask the simple question, but your family's on board with you running for re-election? I know we were just talking about your kids are graduated high school, so are they okay with mom going for another 4 years? Is the husband ready for another 4 years of you being away so much?
Yeah, they of course have seen all the highs and lows, and me kind of crying in a corner sometimes, trying to figure out, how certain people are reacting. So they've seen the dark side of this for sure. And they're very protective of me because I do wear my heart on my sleeve, maybe to a fault. And I think that's kind of, it can be a curse and a superpower because I feel the needs of the community. I feel what isn't being said. I feel the needs of members of council and try to pull them out of it. And we've had big conversations about this, and they are on board. And the incredible thing, now that my kids are adults, they were the first two to sign my nomination papers. And I actually cried a little bit when they signed the nomination papers because it was just, they were, 6 and 8 when I first started on council, and for them to now be a part of this democratic process, it's just such an incredible honor for them to be a part of it. So
did they ever use my mom's the mayor so I can get away with this at all?
It's quite the opposite. They're very sheepish about it at school, and they don't want people to highlight it, and especially in social studies class sometimes they'd come in rolling their eyes saying their social studies teacher asked them about something that's happening in the town or pointed out the mayor. And a few times we've gone to the school and done surveys with the school and asked the kids, hey, what do you think Nanton needs over the next 5 years? And my daughter actually had to tell some of the kids, yeah, my mom's the mayor, so they're super low-key, do not flex about it at all. But
I'd be flexing about it every day of the week.
But people definitely remind them that this is who I am, so.
Jen, one last question, and I'll let you go, but why should people put their trust in you for another 4 years as the mayor of the beautiful town of Nanton, Alberta?
Now I've got to sell myself a little bit, but
You're a real estate agent. You should be able to do that.
Yeah, fair. And I think they align quite well, politics and real estate. But I think ultimately I'm here for the right reasons. I'm adaptable, and just because we're going down a certain path, we're not all in on it. We're always open to feedback. And I think in just looking at the world around us in unstable times, sometimes a little bit of stability at the smallest level of governance is how to keep your town relevant. And I believe I do bring that still. And I'm still passionate about it. I still love it. I still get butterflies when I attend council meetings. And I think that's my benchmark, that if I started dragging my feet into these council chambers, I need to do a self-check. And I always hope that I will know when my time is done. And yeah, and it wasn't a decision made lightly. 12 years is a long time.
Plus, at the same time, who else can say that Pedro Pascal came to your own community
Right?
and filmed a TV show here?
I know, it's a big flex for sure. And we had a Netflix show film here. We've had a few movies film here as of late. So really, it's just about meeting the celebrities. So
That's all Mayor is.
Yeah.
Jen, I want to thank you so much from the bottom of my heart for sitting down and doing this. This is an honest to goodness, great pleasure to chat with you. I always get so much joy when I sit down and chat with you. So
oh,
thank
my
you.
true pleasure. Thank you for coming to Nanton today.
Thank you so much for tuning in for another episode of Alberta Municipal Votes 2025. Now, we hope you've enjoyed today's conversation and gained some valuable insights into the world of this upcoming Alberta municipal election scheduled for October 20th. Now, editorial note time. If you are a candidate running for reeve, councillor, or even mayor, please reach out to us. We would love to have you on the show so we can talk about yourself and the reason why you are running for municipal council in your municipality. Now, your support means the world to us. So if you can, share this episode with your friends, your family, and yes, even your community, and help keep the conversation going. Until next time, stay informed, stay engaged, and we will be back with a brand new episode of Alberta Municipal Votes 2025 on Municipal Affairs shortly. Till then, everyone.